Good morning, everyone. Thank you for being here. My name is Eric Bernstein, and I am the Coalition Director of We Make Minnesota. We are a coalition of labor and community groups united in support of a fair tax code and a budget sufficient to meet our state's public investment needs. I'll provide a little background on HF 4343, and then Representative Lee will speak about her outlook and motivation for introducing this bill. After that, we'll hear from a few workers and community members that have joined us today, and then we'll open it up for questions. HF 4343 represents an important step towards a modern tax code that reflects shifting consumer spending patterns and the growth of key industries. By ending the current state tax exemption for digital advertising sales and services and for physical advertising space like billboards, this legislation will raise over $300 million fiscal years 28-29, while also reducing the state's sales tax rate by 0.15 percentage points. HF 4343 represents a vital update to a revenue source that was established at a time when the consumption of tangible goods represented the bulk of commercial activity. Today, we have a largely service-based and increasingly digital economy, but our sales tax base has not kept up. In fact, we have moved in the wrong direction. With sales tax exemptions worth a total of more than $10 billion in 2026, Minnesota now excludes more of our total potential sales tax base than we include. The result of our porous sales tax is that Minnesota raises less revenue for each percentage point of tax assessed, relying on a higher rate to make up the difference. In 2021, for example, South Dakota raised 30% more money in per capita sales taxes despite a rate that was 40% lower. They did this by applying a lower rate to a much larger base of economic activity. Minnesota's current arrangement means not only less revenue to invest in essential public services, but a higher relative burden on more volatile income taxes and geographically inequitable property taxes. This makes our budget less stable and robust. Our current sales tax base is particularly unfair to manufacturers, builders, and retailers who pay sales taxes on their inputs or who sell taxable products. Minnesota businesses pay 48% of our statewide sales tax burden, while large web platforms like Meta or Google pay little or none. These tech giants are not only growing, but highly monopolistic, with just a handful capturing more than 2/3 of all advertising revenue and billions of dollars in profits each year. It is time that we ensure the growing advertising industry pays its fair share to ensure that Minnesota can meet its basic public investment needs. Here to talk a little bit more about that is Representative Liz Lee.
Thank you, Eric. Good morning, everyone. I am Representative Liz Lee, and I proudly represent the east side of St. Paul. My district, 67A, has one of the lowest household incomes in our state. Our median household income is just like that of folks in Virginia, Minnesota, or Eveleth. But regardless of which part of the state you live in, it's pretty clear that Minnesotans are paying their fair share of taxes when billion-dollar corporations are not. This bill is intended to fix that so that we have the funding we need to invest in schools, healthcare, infrastructure, childcare, local government, and to improve the lives of all Minnesotans. We're laying the foundation for strong local economies so that Minnesota can remain one of the best places to raise a family. A couple weeks ago, we learned that Minnesota's budget outlook is improving, but we still have a growing structural imbalance and many unfunded needs in childcare, healthcare, housing, education, and so much more. And we know that the $1 trillion corporate tax cuts in H.R. 1, which were passed by the Trump Congress in July of last year, were paid for with massive cuts to state and local governments. As part of a response to prepare for this, property taxes across the state are rising by an average of 8%. So in addition to medium-term challenges, our state is set to lose billions of dollars in federal funding in the years to come. This leaves a gaping hole in our social safety net, which was already threadbare. If we do not have a budget that prioritizes people, Minnesotans will be left more vulnerable than ever. The legislature will have to step in to fill this void. The solution is not to cut funding to education or other programs, but rather we have more options. We can raise revenues and strengthen our budget by cutting exemptions that give unfair benefits to big corporations. My bill, House File 4343, gives Minnesotans another option. It would raise more than $300 million in revenues by taxing digital ads. With the large revenue generated, we're also going to cut sales tax to 6.75%. House File 4343 would ensure that our tax base captures the growth of some of the largest, most profitable corporations which are currently exempt. Research shows that 5 of the largest tech firms, Meta, Alphabet, or Google, Amazon, Microsoft, and TikTok capture more than 2/3 of all ad revenues. Minnesota taxpayers should not be subsidizing these massive multi-billion-dollar corporations and also giving them an advantage over Minnesota companies. But right now, Minnesota exempts these the vast majority of services, including many in this rapidly growing digital sector. And that's a major problem for us. And this is why we need House File 4343. Who pays for Minnesota's outdated tax laws? Everyday Minnesotans literally pay higher taxes because we have archaic laws which don't reflect the digital economy that has been evolving in the last 40 years. Minnesotans are literally sick and tired of subsidizing billion-dollar corporations. This is why I'm going to turn the mic over so you can hear directly from some of Minnesota's taxpayers. Thank you.
Hello, my name is Ellery Roski. I'm a working mom of 3. My oldest is in kindergarten and attends after-school care. My middle child is in a daycare center part-time, and my youngest is currently home with me thanks to the Minnesota Paid Family and Medical Leave. However, growing a family is not as simple as it once was. To decide how many children we wanted and when to have them, we had to consider the cost of childcare. In fact, it was the factor that weighed most heavily on my family. When my youngest begins childcare, our annual childcare cost will be over $37,000. And that's just part-time care since we're lucky enough to have consistent family help. In addition to childcare, babies require stuff. As a parent and as a Minnesota resident, I pay taxes on a lot of that stuff. While diapers are not taxed in our state, things like baby shampoo, lotion, sunscreen, they are taxable. But the companies that are advertising these products to me, the companies that magically find you as soon as you're pregnant, do not have to pay taxes on the advertising services that they're providing. Too many elected officials understand the childcare crisis. They understand that we should be publicly funding childcare so that it's low cost or even no cost to families like mine, and so that teachers can earn wages that are on par with K-12 teachers. These elected officials even say that they support childcare funding, but in the next breath they say there's no money to do it. By simply including these advertising services in the Minnesota sales tax, we could collect hundreds of millions of dollars. That says pretty clearly that there is money for childcare and for all these other social services that we know make our communities thrive. Minnesota families are tired of excuses. We want to contribute to the communities and to our state, but we're being told that there isn't money to support the high-quality childcare and education or making sure that our kids are housed and fed, when there clearly is enough money for tax breaks for the wealthy companies. A budget is a moral document. It shows where our priorities are. It's well past time to prioritize our kids and families over the wealthy corporations who can afford to pay more than their fair share.
Good morning. My name is Sarah Frank. I am a dental assistant at Hennepin County Medical Center, where I've worked for 28 years. I am also the president of AFSCME Local 2474, which is one of 2 locals at HCMC comprising of 2,700 total workers at the hospital and clinics. Between past mismanagement of the HHS board, the collapse of UCare, and the Medicaid cuts and work requirements in HR 1, and the impact of Operation Metro Surge, our hospital has been under an immense amount of pressure, and we need a lifeline from the legislator so we can continue to be Minnesota's safety net hospital. Without us, much of Minnesota's healthcare system would collapse, and to avoid that, we need revenue. For that reason, AFSCME stands in the strong support of the proposals like Representative Lee's House File 4343, which will raise revenue to address Minnesota's immediate needs, like keeping HCMC open. It is not just appropriate, but essential that large, profitable corporations pay their fair share of taxes to fund vital healthcare infrastructure like HCMC. Others will say more about this proposal, but I want to add my perspective as a healthcare provider and remind everyone, while tech giants like Meta and Google are exempt from sales tax on their main revenue source, Our hospital and all of our patients pay the provider tax, which pays for Minnesota Care. We understand as Minnesotans that we need to pay our share to ensure everyone gets access to health care that they need. Why should TikTok and Amazon be any different? I want to thank Representative Lee for authorizing House File 4343, establishing a sales tax on digital advertising, and I want to encourage everyone in the state legislature to act with great urgency, not just to stabilize HCMC, but to fund us adequately so we can afford the technology and physical upgrades we need to effectively treat our patients. Thank you.
Good morning. My name is Sunshine Parker. I'm a musician living in Scandia, Minnesota, and I've been part of Minnesota's music community for over 20 years. I'm a leader with Twin Cities United Performers, a group of over 500 performers in the Twin Cities organizing to make Minnesota the best place in the world to be a performer. I've played everywhere from small neighborhood bars to beloved larger venues, and like so many musicians in this state, music is my life's work. I made $4.96 from all streaming services in 2025. Very few artists I know have ever made meaningful income from streaming. And it's worth remembering that Spotify didn't start out as an idea built around music. It started out as an idea built around selling advertising, and music turned out to be the most profitable traffic source. Companies like Spotify are posting record profits, and those profits are built on artists' labor. These platforms benefit themselves, the giant record labels that have stake in streaming services, and the very few famous artists in the world. Meanwhile, the rest of us are working multiple jobs just to keep creating the music that fills their platforms. Today, we're saying that this has to change, and by putting a small sales tax on digital advertising, we can make sure these wealthy corporations pay what they owe. We can provide the support that is desperately needed, support for working artists, resources for struggling independent venues, investment in music programs in our schools, and the creation of more community spaces. Minnesota's music scene has always been powered by people and by artists, by fans, by communities showing up for each other. And today we're saying it's time for the system to start showing up for us too. Thank you.
All right, good morning, everyone. My name is Natasha Doctor, and I am a middle school social studies teacher, Education Minnesota member, and the first vice president of the Minneapolis Federation of Educators. And I'm going to keep my remarks very short. As educators, we depend on our communities, and our communities depend on us every single day. What we need though, we don't get from the state. What we don't get from the state is almost always approved by local levy at the ballot box. Proposals like this ensure that the largest and most profitable corporations are paying their fair share so that property taxes don't have to raise too much. We strongly support House File 4343 and all efforts to ensure that large tech companies like Meta, Microsoft, and Amazon contribute more to our schools and therefore our collective well-being. As an educator, I also must call attention to the predatory practices that these social media companies have on our young people. The very business model of these companies is to leverage insecurity and to create addictive patterns in the unformed brains of our youth, and then to sell advertising space based on their frayed attention spans. Now, you want to tell us as educators that that sale should be tax-free. That isn't right. We know that isn't right, and it needs to change. We hope that legislators join educators across the state in saying no, absolutely not. We must tax Amazon, we must tax Meta, we must tax big tech, and we must tax all advertising. Thank you very much. And now I think we'll turn it over to Representative Lee.
Sure, great. Well, thanks everybody for joining us today. We recognize that, it's a tough path forward with House File 4343, but this is a fight that we're not going to give up. So thank you.
I think we have one question from the front. Thank you.